members searching, singlemuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by singlemuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your relationship and couples coach, as well as your host for tonight. A very warm welcome to all of you, whether you're streaming on Facebook or Twitter or live on Sky Channel 752. We're here on British Muslim TV welcoming all of you who are streaming, whether it's in the UK or across the globe, as I know we have viewers from across the world. And I want to welcome you all and really happy to have another episode tonight. If you want to join in the conversation, you are most welcome to do so. And you can call in directly by speaking to myself or my guest and calling in the number on 01924231083. Do remember to ask the bill payer's permission, as standard network rates do apply. You can also message us if you want to privately, anonymously, and I can read out your messages or any of your queries and questions or any comments that you have on tonight's episode. And you can do that by messaging us on the free WhatsApp service. And that number is 07585835150. We're going to be discussing another topic around relationships, as we have so many queries around this subject and it's never ending. And we want to make sure that you get the best value, the most, real expertise and advice and information so that you can help yourselves through this testing and challenging time. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about why are you still single? Especially if you are looking for a relationship and you are struggling to find your potential spouse. Now, to answer this question and to have this conversation with me tonight, I have a lovely guest who is Akila Chetitah. Assalamu alaikum, Akila.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, Sister Fahima. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was so looking forward to having you today, and I'm so excited about the topic. It's something that comes up again and again. We think it's a simple answer, but actually there is a science, there's a biology, there is so much behind all of this. So we're going to go straight into it. But before we do, tell me a little bit about yourself and your line of work, please.
Yes, sure. So I'm Akila Chetitah. I'm a life coach, couples coach, and business coach. And I help Muslim women as well as brothers feel heard, loved, successful in the dunya and the akhirah. What I offer is through my company, Coaching by Akila, I offer face-to-face coaching, so one-to-one, groups coaching as well, and Akila Academy, which is an online academy where I teach all the skills that I can give in person, but that can be accessible, online whenever people want it and wherever on earth.
Amazing. I love that. And the fact that you talked about it being a skill. A lot of us really don't think that we have to be a particular way. It does take some work. It does take a lot of psychology. It does take so many things. But before we also go into this conversation, I do want to make it clear that when I ask the question, why are you still single? It's not to say that there's anything wrong. If you actually choose to be single, you're fine at this very moment in your life where you are single and secure, as some of us are. We are, chasing education or our jobs, and not to say that you cannot have a relationship with it, but sometimes we're not in that phase and stage in life, and you're absolutely fine with that. And if you are fine with that, then maybe this conversation isn't for you at this very moment in time, but it can still be useful when you are ready to look for a relationship. However, if you are single, like many people out there, especially in our Muslim community, who are finding it very difficult to find their spouse, whether you're male or female, whether it's your first time looking or you've come out of a relationship that has not been successful and you're looking again, it doesn't matter what age, what background, what race you come from, we all seem to have this issue, and it seems to be so prominent right now. Now, tell me, Akila, why is it that we are having so many single Muslims out there struggling to find their spouse?
So I think there are multiple answers to this question. The first one I would say is that there's a lack of three things. First, a lack of self-knowledge and self-care and self-love. So if you don't love yourself, you will never attract someone who's going to show you the love you're seeking in life. The second one is lack of faith in oneself and faith in Allah. And also this conception that, we say, in Islam, that Allah is as you think of him. So if you think Allah, I don't know, is going to punish you, Allah is just making you, stall basically in your marriage search for a reason, he's making you pay for your sins, then that's what you're going to get. But if you trust in Allah, if you have faith in Allah that he's going, he's making you ready, getting you ready to meet the right person, and he's preparing that person for you at the same time, and your paths are going to cross later on down the road when it's the right time, then you will have a content heart and you will have that tawakkul, the trust in Allah. And the third thing would be a lack of network. And I think sometimes culturally we have this conception of, I want to get married, but I shouldn't say it. It's shameful to say that I desire marriage. Especially as a woman in some cultures, it's like you just have to, sit by your family, sit by your mom, sit at home and wait. Someone's going to come and knock at the door and say, this is the girl I want. And I knew she existed from I don't know where. So there's these three aspects, and I'm happy to dive deeper into each one if you agree.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. Those are really powerful questions that you've actually said, Rayleigh, over there. And I've actually got some thoughts about what you said as well. The three things are really essential, actually. And we do talk about this again and again, but we're going to go deeper into it, like you said. Now, when you say if you don't love yourself, then you're not going to find love. But then how does one love themselves? It's very difficult, and it might be different for different people. How would you guide someone to love themselves first and be a magnet to find that sort of match?
Yes, a very good question. Thank you for this question. So I think, as you said, the first step to loving yourself is knowing yourself. And I think that's something, we're not taught in schools about self-development, psychology, personality, and personality tests and traits. That's rarely done. I remember I only started doing it when I was in business school, and this was to be used, by companies for then, recruitment purposes. But I think it's a key skill that we should be developing earlier in our lives, because with self-understanding, you then have self-love. You accept yourself with your qualities and with your flaws. You know what you have to work on. So I remember 5 years ago, I took a self-development workshop in France with a sister called Myriam Lakhdar Bounemcha, which is an NLP coach and couples coach in France. And I remember doing this workshop and realizing, the personality type I was, which was a bit shocking, because I was like, how can they read my mind? How does this, trait, how can my whole life basically be summarized in this description of a type? And we can speak about it later if you want, the different types of personality tests that we can use to get to know each other or get to know ourselves. So with that, then you have the understanding of, okay, I'm very good at this, but I'm very bad at this. And you then start this path of, self-improvement that is key to then building a healthy relationship. So this is how you get, self-knowledge. And then with self-knowledge, you get the empathy that you show yourself and compassion, because you realize no one is perfect. I'm not perfect. I have flaws. I have time, and I can take time to work on them. But I love myself as Allah has created me, and I am worthy of my love, of Allah's love, and of, a future spouse's love. So you start
very interesting.
By this love first, and then you receive it from around you.
Lovely. I love that. I think another thing that you've said is really interesting is about the personality tests. And I know we can do this online, but when you work alongside a coach, you know, or you work alongside someone who's professional, you can go through it with somebody and discuss it in depth, where you can understand those tests and you can actually divulge into a deeper meaning as to what, you know, is the understanding behind it. So, but do you not think that we can get caught up in, okay, this is me, and this is not my partner, it doesn't match me? I mean, to what extent can we use it? To what extent does it work? And to what extent do you think that we need to be a little bit wary about? Because we can have self-awareness and we can know ourselves really well, and we can also love ourselves really well to a certain extent, right? But that can also be a hindrance to sometimes where you actually feel that you've placed yourself in a box or a label, and then your match has to be either, you know, complimenting you. But how do they compliment you? Because we need to be careful when we're doing these personality tests. Yes, it's creating self-awareness, but then we do change over time, and we do have to have compromise. And again, it comes back to our faith, like you mentioned. So there's a lot of things around what you've said that we have to not get carried away with one area, and we have to complement it with what are the basics of our teaching. But then again, if you are not religious, if you are not that practicing, how does that affect your personality? Can you quickly answer before we go into a break, and then we'll pick it up again in a few moments?
Yes, sure. So I think, as you said, when you do these personality tests, the key is not to become extreme in it, basically, by saying, I don't know, this type of personality only fits with, I'll take the Enneagram, I'm a type 1, I need to marry a type 1, or I'm a type 9, I need a type 2. We have to remain open to all the opportunities that Allah puts on our, you know, on our path throughout our lives, because He's the one who told us in the Quran that He made us all different. And I can't remember the exact verse, but I'm sure our listeners and viewers are familiar with it, where Allah said He made us in different colors, different tribes, so we get to know each other. And I think,
well, as you mentioning that, and you're going to hopefully remember more of that quote and give us more food for thought when we come back. And now I'm buzzing because I have so much more questions. Make sure that you do take advantage tonight. We have a special guest who's very learned in this field of helping individuals, especially when it comes to relationships. If you want to participate, make sure you call in or send in your messages. I'm happy to read them out. We will be joining you in a few moments. Make sure you stay tuned. Don't leave this, as we have so much more to discuss. And I look forward to seeing you after the break. Take care.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. Really exciting conversation, and it's actually going in a direction which I didn't even expect. It's so critical that we do understand when we are single and we're not finding our spouse, and what is it that we need to do? We get this question again and again, and we have such an interesting introduction so far, and I want to continue with that. Before the break, Akila mentioned that there were 3 things that we do need to sort of discover and think about. And one of them was loving yourself first in order to find the love that you search and seek. And also having a faith. We don't have enough faith. And looking at some of the comments already on Facebook, thank you so much for sharing them. We have people across from Nairobi in Africa. We've got, you know, people from across the globe who streams every single week. I want to thank you so much for watching us, and also with all your comments. The other thing that you mentioned, Akila, was that we have the lack of network, and also the lack of, you know, putting ourselves out there in order to be available in a way to say that, you know, we are actually looking for a spouse. Before the break, I asked you about what if we lack faith? Because a lot of us, especially when you're younger, well, even when you come to certain stages in your life and, things happen and you feel, I just don't have the strength to believe anymore. And I've waited so long. And as much as I do need to have the faith and stick by, my creator, but when you've tried so many things and you've waited so many years and there's always either rejection or no one's coming forward to actually even potentially ask for your hand in marriage, what is it that you do then? What is it that you would look for even deeper when you can actually build yourself up to keep going and keep that strength in order to keep searching?
SubhanAllah, it's a very good question, because I see quite a few cases of, people in this situation who are still looking, who are getting older, older and older, and feeling the years passing by and still looking for a spouse. So I'd say, going back to this self-knowledge, once you cherish yourself, you have faith in yourself and you have faith in Allah that, whatever Allah has decided for you is good. Whether it is finding a spouse in the dunya or maybe meeting a better spouse, in the akhirah, someone that he has already married you with in paradise. So with this, usually you find contentment in your heart. You find that peace that you were looking for, and you kind of submit to your Lord, really, to, his plan, because he knows better. And I remember, because I translate, videos about, Islamic knowledge from French to English and sometimes the other way around. I remember working with a brother on a project where the shuyukh were saying that there was this man who was, begging Allah, he was praying Allah, to get him married, and another one who was praying Allah and, begging him to grant him children. And once they got married and once they had children, they found out, there were flaws with their spouses. They ended up getting divorced. The other one, all his children ended up being, disabled, having disabilities. And he was like, oh Allah, why did you grant it to me if you knew it wasn't good for me? And same thing with the one who was married and had severe issues with his spouse. So it's basically, from what the Sheikh was explaining, is that from out of his mercy, Allah grants you whatever you're asking. But maybe he knows, it's not maybe, surely he knows better than us what's good for us. Because we remember that he loves us more than our mothers do. He's more merciful to us than our mothers. So trusting in his plan, keeping, on this journey of learning throughout life, even learning through hardship, even if I know it's not easy. That's I'd say the path to our peace of mind and a content heart.
That is really interesting. And we actually do have a comment on Facebook saying that I'm still single because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has still not given me my partner yet. So we do always get these kinds of thoughts in our mind. And I think what you said is really, really important, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never says no. He only says not yet, or wait a little bit longer, because at the end of the day, you'll get something better. And like you mentioned, the riwayat, the hadith, or whichever story that it comes from, that sometimes, even though we get this misconception that we do understand that getting married is half your deen, half your faith, but it doesn't mean that if it doesn't come to you that you're not still complete and whole, because you've done what you can, but you still have to be patient and content in the situation that you're in. Because remember, when you are actually looking for a spouse, you need to also, I'm not saying that we have to constantly be our best selves, but we have to be in a particular way to attract that spouse. And if you are looking kind of sad or down or morbid, thinking that it's not coming to me, and also the thought of constantly focusing on what you don't have creates more of that. It's really important that we realize how the mind works, how the brain can really recreate and rewire the same thoughts. And if you're going to have constant, consistent negative thoughts, you're going to actually make that happen in your life. So when somebody has faith and they are content, and, people always say we've tried everything. But when I speak to a lot of the clients, They haven't tried everything, not really. So there's always more that you can do. Now, when you say that we are not actually putting ourselves out there, it's a little bit difficult to put ourselves out there. And a lot of things now are online, and it is a scary platform for a lot of people who are not aware. They don't really want to mix and mingle. So what's your advice to put yourself out there in this day and age, where even though it is open, in sort of like the dating apps, for example, where you can meet people, sometimes it's a safe space to do it if you know how. A lot of people may say, well, it's not a good place, but I think there's a process as well in order to put yourself out there and be safe and know how to find somebody. So how do you network? How do you put yourself out there, especially as women?
I'd say the first stage is your closest friends and relatives. If you feel comfortable with them, you know you can trust them with this amana, which is to look for the perfect spouse for you. You can start with sharing it with them and telling them, look, this is my criteria for the right person for me. This is, I don't know, the age range, and we'll dive deeper into the questions later. But sharing your desire to get married with people you can trust, and trust them to then, you know, look around themselves, kind of, you know, as we say, you know, the universe, as we say as coaches, really we know as Muslims, Allah basically answering our dua and making people more aware of what you're looking for. So if people know, your friends, your relatives, if you're comfortable speaking about this with your mother, with your father, sometimes even for girls, you know, speaking to your father about it, this will show that, you know, you're serious about it first. And also, these people themselves within their networks, they can start looking out for someone for you, and they can start, you know, recommending people. So I think it's what's called here, you know, rishtas, muqabalas in Arabic. So you're then introduced to someone, you get to meet them, and then, you know, from then on you can move forward. As you said, there's dating apps, there's websites that you can use to search for a spouse, and I agree with you. Sometimes it might be a space where people feel unsafe. But as you said, there's a process, and I think there's a way of vetting people that we still need to do in this day and age, and especially in this day and age because of, you know, the new technology we're using to look for spouses. And I think that's the kind of the dichotomy we have. So the paradox we have in this day and age, it's that there's such a huge pool of people that are accessible to get married to us, but at the same time there's barriers to us knowing, you know, if this person is really who they say they are, if this person is really consistent, you know, with whatever they're saying from the beginning to the end until we get married, and they're not going to change afterwards. So
Absolutely,
putting
definitely
out there like this.
Absolutely. No, it's very true. There's definitely, you need to filter through, even though there's quite a few fish in the sea, you need to filter the ones that is your match, and you got to know how. And it's, people blame the dating apps, but actually we are actually in control of it. We are the ones that need to equip ourselves as to how to use this technology. It's not the technology. The technology is there for good or bad. You have to be the one to know how. So make sure that you don't blame the apps for being in a particular way. You have to have the skill in order to be able to have the process and to vet, as you said. We do have a question, if we can maybe get this answered before we go into a break, saying, Salaam alaikum, Fahima and Akila. Basically, what advice do you give to any guy who is watching and wanting to approach a lady, especially as ourselves wearing the hijab? Should he first say hi? Should he be straightforward and direct? Should he give her a compliment? What's your thoughts on that?
I think, so wa alaikum salam, and thank you for this question. I think approaching her and being direct would be the best way. Would be the best way because it shows your intention from the very beginning, that it's pure, and it will reassure her that you're not there to play. You're serious about, you know, getting to know her and maybe in the future, inshallah, getting married.
Very true. I just want to also add to that, that when you are approaching somebody, make sure you have the language skills, the communication skills. Don't just say, yo, you're looking in a particular way today, give her a compliment that is actually going to be, because honestly, there is a lack of communication skills. There's a lack of a lot of things that we are going to go into after the break.
Yeah.
And a lot of men and women, especially men, who the ones that do initiate conversations, they need to be skilled in how to actually be attractive and to be respectful and also come across as serious. We don't need this kind of lingo, which is every day, which is what they would say to anyone. If you are approaching a Muslim woman and you are serious for marriage, you can approach her directly, but you make sure that you have the skill to do that. And if you don't, then make sure you get the help for it. Now we are coming into another break very shortly. Make sure that you have your questions streaming through as you are continuously doing so. And I really do appreciate the comments, the questions. If you want to call in live, you are most welcome to do so. I know it's very daunting to speak to us live, but I assure you, you are in safe hands and we are prepared to keep you anonymous, even if you call in or you want to share any of your questions and queries on the WhatsApp messages. I just want to say thank you again for keep supporting us and being on the show. And if it wasn't for yourselves, we won't be here. This is really for you. And please, just to show our appreciation, I would like to ask you to join us back again after the break, where we will have much more conversation with my guest, Akila, and we'll be talking much more into why you are single and how we can get you married. See you soon.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm loving the interaction and the engagement that we're getting so far. Thank you so much for your questions, and they keep coming through. And before I go on to my questions, I'm going to answer some of yours that are streaming through on the Facebook. Before the break, we spoke about basically how to approach somebody in order to speak to them about marriage. Now, we said, yes, approach them in a particular way, approach them directly, have the communication skills. Well, we've got a comment saying that, Assalamu alaikum, I'm a very shy person and I find it really difficult to approach a lady. So what should I do?
So, wa alaikum salam, a very good question. I'm shy myself, I'd say, and a great way for people who are introvert, shy people, is to write things down. So just a little note, saying your intention, leaving a contact number or an email address, and then handing it over or dropping it as you pass by can show your intention.
That is so funny you say that. A few years ago, I was at the train station and someone dropped their number and I was like, what are you doing? So I didn't realize that actually that was a thing that people could do. This was like even years ago where women would even drop something in order to make the first move for a guy. And you know what? These things do actually work. I did not contact that person though. And, at the end of the day, I guess, you know what, with women as well, we sometimes when men do initiate, we actually hold ourselves back thinking, well, I can't really, respond to this. Why should I respond to it? And yet you're looking to get married, but you won't take the chance. So you got to give it to the guys. They really keep at it and they get rejected. They keep getting no's. They keep, being ignored or being, sometimes even abused for the fact that they are trying to talk to you seriously. But again, you got to come across in a particular way. And of course, if you're shy, it's not easy. So I have to say, I like that idea. And if anyone is single and looking and, at the same time, don't just throw away the opportunity. It's really important that, give these guys a break sometimes. Okay. It's really hard for them to put themselves out there, even if they're confident or not. And they take the no's, they take the rejections a lot, and it can actually damage your self-esteem to a certain extent. I do give credit to you guys out there for constantly trying, but make sure you try in a respectful manner. That's the most important thing. Now, when you started off at the beginning, I want to go back to that actually, because you were going to go deeper into it. So could you give us a little bit more in depth as to how you started off with the introduction with regards to the self-awareness, so that we can actually move forward in this conversation and give much more tips with regards to understanding ourselves to find the other partner?
Yes, so the very first thing I would say as well that we need to search into in self-knowledge is understanding our needs. So in psychology, just if you Google, psychological needs, you can find this online. You have a list of needs, which are, for instance, needing space, needing rest, needing adventure, needing attention, love, respect. And you can find then the needs that resonate with you, and then you can understand how you can satisfy those needs. So for instance, if it's adventure, you can start, looking for travel opportunities, traveling around the world, discovering new cultures, new countries. If it's for space or fresh air, you can, go more outdoors, you can exercise outdoors, you can go, I don't know, to the farm, to the beach, anything that works for you. And I think it's important that we're first familiar with our own needs on a human basis before we go to the but what are the rights and duties of a husband and a wife in Islam? Because sometimes I think we neglect that, and it's once we're in the marriage that we realize, oh, but my needs are not met.
Yes.
Another thing I would mention is that once you've realized what your needs are, try and fill your bucket yourself first. Before you think, for instance, I need attention, I need respect, and I need love. Okay, let me look for someone who can give it to me. Give it to yourself first. Give yourself that attention. So take time for yourself daily, date yourself, go to the restaurant, to the cafe on your own, read books, have fun with yourself on your own. And answer your needs yourself first. And finally, another thing in terms of, personality and understanding yourself, which I've discovered a few years ago, and which I teach in my program online on Akila Academy, is femininity or masculinity. Because I think, traditionally in Islam, we had this image of, men being very masculine and women being very feminine. But with the days and nowadays, things have changed, especially after the First World Wars here in the West, and the same change has happened back home in our countries, in Africa, in Asia, which is that women have started to become more masculine themselves. Women work, women earn money, women take decisions, women have leadership roles and want to be heard. And on the other side, we have men who then, take their space as a loving dad, a loving husband, a caring husband who shares, the household chores and everything. So understanding first, what am I as a woman, or what am I as a man? Do I have a personality that's mainly masculine or mainly feminine? So I'll give you my example. For instance, I know I'm mostly masculine. I'm the eldest from my family. I have 4 younger brothers. I was raised like a boy, so I would go, horse riding, karate, building houses with my dad, doing so many things that were mainly masculine, and this kind of shaped me. But I discovered my femininity through marriage and through becoming a mother. So once you understood what energy you have most, you can understand what you're looking for in a spouse as well, which we'll discuss later.
That is so interesting. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because a lot of us do sort of get blindsided by who we are. And we just look at it just from a gender perspective, but we actually do have these traits as women, as men, as well, as you described very, very lovely and very beautifully and clearly. And I think we do need to understand that as the world has changed and women are taking more dominant roles, leadership roles, more influences, we have changed not just in our job, but it's actually changed in our attitude, our behaviors, our mindset, and it can make a difference to you knowing how to sort of match with your spouse. We do have another question before we continue with the conversation. Again, it says, Salam alaikum to Fahima and Akila. For me, I am still single and in my early 20s, and this is because of my standards and qualities I look for in a lady. I would say I haven't met a Muslim woman who I feel is my match. I'm waiting for marriage and saving myself for my future wife, inshallah. As we know, respect, kindness, and honesty are all important, alhamdulillah. But would you say it is good to save yourself for your spouse? Akila, over to you.
So, wa alaikum salam. Thank you for this question. And mashallah, I thought it was going to be a question from a sister, because usually we hear mostly women saying, I'm saving myself, for my future spouse. But I find it beautiful that it's a man who's speaking to us and telling us he's saving himself for his future spouse. Mashallah, I think it's amazing what you're doing. It might be hard because I know there's a lot of temptation out there, but it's better for your heart, for your relationship with Allah, and for your future spouse, inshallah, so you can get together in a healthy halal marriage and learn and discover things together, inshallah.
Definitely. Very, very good answer. And again, thank you so much for the questions. And I do appreciate everyone that is streaming, watching, listening, as well as messaging us. It is very difficult because we are in this jihad al-nafs, we are fighting against our own souls. And even though we're humans with this animalistic need, we do need to fight. And it is a continuous battle. And yes, with dua, with tawakkul, we need to understand that even in these challenging times, we can overcome them. Now, Akila, when it comes to the culture, the heritage, our past relationships, even, because a lot of us, we've been talking a lot about, if you're single and never been married before, it might be difficult. But what about if you've come out of a relationship, that relationship didn't work, and now you're single again? Isn't that a different ball game? Isn't that a different type of being single? So how would you then, because again, we have so much more baggage, we have so much more experience, whether it's good or bad, and we might even need some healing and time by ourselves to, be okay with being single for a while and process before we move on. So what is it like in that space of being single from a past relationship and now looking to another?
Yeah, subhanAllah, it's a very good question, because that's, as you said, two different cases. Someone who's always been single, looking to get married, will have different expectations, different thoughts about marriage, compared to someone who's been through it before and has had a good or bad experience. As you said, so there'll be different layers, I would say, of experience that can then shape your new search for a spouse once you've been divorced. The first layer will be, culture and, Islam, how practicing you are. The second one will be heritage, which is what you inherited from your parents, the types of couples and relationships you saw around you that maybe in your past relationship you copied, unconsciously. And you realize, actually, that's not meant for me. I need to, move back and take a step back and do things differently for my own good. And thirdly, it's the relationship you were in just before. So now you've got the breakup. You have to kind of express all the juice you can from this relationship, take all the lessons possible you can take from it, so you can grow and not, as sometimes it happens, fall into depression and think, there's no hope for the future for myself. So it's totally different in this case. And I think we have sometimes, some people who divorce go through trauma and they, as you said, need healing. And
we're going into a topic right now, which is very deep. And I don't want to stop while we're going to almost have a break. I want to continue with this. And I'm obviously going to make sure that we do discuss this in much more depth. But please do keep sending your messages through. It is absolutely amazing that we have Akila with us tonight, giving us so much insight, so much food for thought, so many different angles of looking at this question, so that you can actually look back and sit back and inshallah take some notes, and you can be practical about maybe applying it to yourself. I hope to see you in a short while where we will have the final part of the episode. Make sure you stay tuned and join us shortly.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. We've come to the final part of the episode, but make sure that you do send in your messages, as we do have still time to answer them and to make sure that we get the best out of Akila. And before we actually go into my questions, we do have another question that was sent to us during the break. I'm going to paraphrase because it's quite long. And it's basically discussing about how we are in this world where basically living in the West, we have this party, pop culture, hookup, dating, being really open to mixing and mingling with the opposite gender, and falling into the fact that it's very difficult to actually hold yourself back. And because you're single for so long, there's a lot of pornography addiction, there's a lot of partying that goes on that actually can keep you single for a long period of time, then you actually concentrating on finding your spouse, because you get sort of raveled into this kind of world of being single and mingling too much with other people because it's so easy here. So how do you get yourself out of that situation? Because sometimes people can enjoy being single for a long time and they can get used to that when they do not have a conscience, when they do not practice as deeply as they should. So how would you guide someone who's going through that kind of struggle?
It's a very important question in these times, as you said. And I think the very first step is to take a step back. So whoever is going through this life, just book a 2-day trip to Wales or somewhere where you can be secluded from people, just so you have time to think on your own, by yourself, about your goal in life. Is your goal to keep doing this, staying addicted to pornography and knowing the damages it's causing to you right now and the damages it can cause to yourself and your future relationships? Or do you want to invest in yourself, step back and focus on things that matter and that will bring you benefit on the long term? So whether it's education, seeking Islamic knowledge as well, exercising more, kind of diverting the focus from this world and the temptations to something positive, something you can have an input in and you can take, you can enjoy doing, that will benefit you for the future. So as I said, that can be seeking knowledge, or even, and especially if you've already started being addicted to pornography, it's seeking help, speaking to a counselor, someone that can help you through your healing journey, because we know it takes time. And I know in our communities sometimes it's a shameful subject and we don't want to speak to someone else, to a third person, about our problems. But in these instances, we really need to do it for our own good and for our future marriages.
Absolutely. I think what you raised is very crucial. And thank you for that question as well, because the questions we get is not just from one person, maybe one person sending it, but there's unfortunately quite a lot of people that are struggling with, the fact that there's so much temptation out there. And when you're single and you're free and you have that kind of lifestyle, it's very difficult. But as we know, as psychologists, studies and research, that all it takes, like you mentioned, Akila, is to refocus, rewind, change that sort of habit that you used to, and sometimes just pulling out of that sort of situation and getting into a different environment or place where you can actually be with yourself. Changing even some of your network. And I know people have changed friendship groups. You can still have those friendships, but make sure that is at a distance if it's not serving you, because at the same time, we are living in this world. We want to make the best of it, but ultimately we're living for the akhirah. So don't forget that. Okay, that's really, really important. And as believers, regardless if you are practicing, regardless of what level you're at, you have that awareness. Deep down inside that even if you're partying and you're going out and you're meeting and mixing and mingling, it's not really true happiness than settling in the halal and in the right way, like how we are guided. So make sure you do take care of yourself. And thank you, Akila, for that. when it comes to looking for a spouse, Akila, what is it that we need to look for in ourselves and for the other person? What are the questions that we need to sort of ask? A lot of the times, I know you've got a whole, series of questions that you basically advise people to ask. Can you share some of that? Because sometimes we get stuck in, looking for the other person and some of the qualities, but to be specific so that we're asking the right questions, which is not surface, but these are the things that's actually going to guide us to that future. So when we are living with them and we're being practical in the everyday duties of being a husband and being a wife, we've addressed this before marriage. What are the questions that you can actually advise when you're single, when you're finding a spouse, and what are the things that you can put across to the other person?
Yeah, sure. So a very important thing is to kind of bring things back to the rational level and forget about the emotional level for a second when you're getting to know someone. And the very first question to ask is about marriage. What's their conception of marriage? How do they see the roles shared within the household, within the family? How do they even see the marriage ceremony being processed? How does it work? Do they see like a big marriage with a mixed gathering, or is it going to be separate? And again, this is based on everyone's level of practicing. So whether you're practicing or not, you will have different criteria, and it's important to discuss these things beforehand. But again, we don't want to focus only on the marriage day. We want to focus on the long term, on the marriage. So what's your goal in the future? Once you get married, what will we do? Will we stay in this country? Will we travel? Where do we want to have our children? How do we want to educate them? Even questions sometimes that we are afraid to ask regarding health issues. So, do you have any chronic health condition? Are you happy to do a health check that I will do myself as well just before getting married to be on the safe side for both of us? Are you happy to share with me, your financial situation at the moment? What do you view as wealth? Because we live in a world where, materialistic possessions are what show a certain status, a certain wealth. But to some people, wealth means something else and success means something else. So it's important to kind of have these questions asked first to see if you're aligned in terms of values, in terms of future plans. So you can even ask a question saying, what are your plans for the next 6 months, for the next 5 years, and then for the next 10 years, to see really on the long term if your vision of life fits this person's vision of life.
Definitely. I think as a coach myself, and I also give premarital advice and workshops, these are some of the questions that I do actually ask people to consider. It's their values, their vision, their worries, and their wants. It's called the VW window. And it's one of the psychological techniques that I actually put across to people to question themselves and their future partners. So what you said is absolutely correct. And inshallah, people are going to take that into account, rewind and listen again, because these are some really amazing points that we're giving today. And inshallah, it's helping you. We do have another question. I think it's from the same person, and they apologize for the long message. Not a problem. I will paraphrase it for you. But again, he says that it's funny that Akila mentioned about putting your number and leaving it, because apparently he did that on a receipt once, as he met a hijabi waitress around his age, and he was speechless by her beauty. And later on, he left his number. He was genuinely shy, but he was just bewildered by her beauty. He asks, was this a reaction just because of the fact that he was attracted to how she looked? Was it something real or not? That's the first question. And the second one is how to get over the rejection, because unfortunately, I don't think that actually worked out. That is very true. Like we mentioned before, a lot of people are attracted by just, looking at the appearance, and they want to know if that's genuine or not. And that is definitely something that we need to consider. And at the same time, when they are constantly being rejected, even if they're doing it, as we mentioned, and he did actually leave his number on the receipt, how would you, again, sort of respond to that?
So two things. In terms of the being attracted to her beauty, so mashallah, sister, and I hope she'll find a suitable suitor and spouse later in the future. What's important is that we know in Islam, in the hadith, that you marry a woman or you marry a husband, for four things, which are beauty, status, lineage, and religiosity. And what's most important is, the practice of the religion. But we know also that you can't just focus on one of these criteria and forget about beauty. So I'm sorry it didn't work out this time, but let's say maybe Allah preserved you from greater harm, because we know people who look good, but on the inside don't look that good. If you see what I mean, like their heart isn't good. So she could have harmed you, maybe, we don't know. Allah knows best. And on the other side, there's people who don't look as good as models, but their hearts are beautiful. So I think this can help you, in your, kind of processing the rejection. And at the same time, as we said before, being content with Allah's decree and whatever He has written. If this person wasn't meant for you, then alhamdulillah, Allah knows best. He has a plan for you. So don't lose hope.
Absolutely. I think, we've had so many questions so far, and I really want to thank everyone for sending that through. We are coming towards the end of the show. But I do want to say thank you, Akila, for being with us tonight. You have given us so much food for thought. Thank you so much for everyone that has been watching. I love everything that you've said. I have so many questions for you still, but inshallah, please do stay with us, collaborate, inshallah, again soon. Whoever wants to get in touch, please do so. Coaching by Akila, if you want to reach her on her Instagram page. She's very much, helpful for anyone who is actually searching for much more advice and guidance. Please do reach out. Thank you, Akila, again, for your wonderful words, your wisdom, your thoughts. Thank you to everyone that's been watching. Thank you for your messages and your continuous interaction. I get a lot of emails as well with all your queries, which I try to answer myself and also get my guests to sort of put forward to them as well when they are on the show. And the live messages that are streaming tonight has been absolutely phenomenal. And we could not have done this without your suggestions, the topics, the episodes each week. And again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Inshallah, we will be back with another episode, another topic, more subjects around relationships, as well as having your wonderful appearance with us. Make sure that you stay tuned and join us. Thank you to my guests and everyone from here on British Muslim TV. Have a wonderful night. Take care. Salam.